Hey guys, it's time for a new video, this time against most common e4, e5 opening online. And I definitely always want to come up with something interesting and something that is going to entertain you, but at the same time to be even fun for the guys who are pretty advanced and that could be useful for them as well. And I just came up with the following idea. Hopefully that finally you can hear me a little bit better, because I did my best to hear me better than usual, because I was just working something with my microphone. So I'm actually waiting for your feedback. So let's go. It's a 4 knights opening, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. Not knight c3, so knight f3, knight c6, knight c3, knight f6, and can you believe it? You know, white has so many moves here. You have a Scotch 4 knights, very common, and that's definitely the most applicable variation. Then you have Italian 4 knights, which is bad because of knight takes e4 by black, because of this move. Italian 4 knights, black should just take and play bishop b4 with a fairly nice game. Then you have Spanish 4 knights, the one that I've been, I've been playing with the white pieces for all these years with a very good results with white pieces. And finally, there is a line h3. What can I say about the h3 line here? What's the point of this funny move? And according to those basic chess principles like CAD rule, centralization, activity, and development, is it centralizing? It's not. Is it active? It's not. Is it developing? It's not, because you have so many other pieces. I'm talking mainly about the bishops that you haven't developed yet. So how can this be good? And by the way, what's the background and history behind h3? Anish Giri played in London Classic 2014 and came up with this line. He played 3 games, won 2, and made 1 draw. But everything would be understandable. But he beat big Vlad Kramnik. So if you beat Kramnik with h3, then something must be really good about this opening. My task in this lecture will be to give you the main ideas, main principles of h3, and to give you like the most important variations here to pay attention at, and to tell me what do you think after all about h3 line for white. Let's get started. After h3 there are so many moves. g6 and d6 are just the same, and the approach is just the same. Whether they play very logical d6, you just go d4, and now makes sense, because in some circumstances it gives you bishop e3, in which case h3 pays off because they won't be able to jump with the knight on g4. While at the same time, when they play bishop e7, you can make decision whether you want to play hyper solid bishop e3, followed by queen d2 long castles, since they already committed themselves with knight c6, or you want to go with my favorite move, g4. That's another point of having the pawn on h3, because it gives you g4, and it gives you now a possibility to go with the light square bishop on g2. After castles, bishop g2, we gotta discuss these positions. This reminds me on some positions that white plays against Philidor defense and Peart's defense. So you go with the bishop g2, and if they go with the rook e8, along with the classic bishop e3, which is absolutely fine in this position, I very much like repositioning this knight via e2 to g3, goes on the king sides, over supports the e4, and afterwards you go with the castles f4 and use the pawn push and attack on the king side. A very lovely line. So after knight e4, queen d4, that's the engine suggestion. You just play castles, bishop e6, and bishop e3. You know what? I wouldn't discuss these positions so much. I just want to tell you that you want to go with a rook e1, that you want to play f4 next, and white has some sort of development advantage and more space here. I definitely prefer white, no matter what you say. Engine says it's plus 0.8. I don't think it's much better for white. I don't think it's slightly better for white. I believe it's something between slightly and much better. So white definitely enjoys more space. White definitely enjoys something that you're happy with, and it's definitely positioned with a possible pawn push on the king side. So it's a very, very likable thing. In case of g6, it doesn't change anything. You just play d4, e takes, knight takes, and when they play bishop g7, once again, you have a possibility to go with bishop e3, in which case pawn on e4 might find itself a little bit weak, but you definitely have like knight takes c6, which I prefer a lot more, bishop d3, castles, and when they play rook e8, rook e1. When they play d6, I play bishop g5. A game like this should absolutely be fine for us, because when you play bishop g5, you would like to go either with queen f3 afterwards, and rook a1, or a queen d2 afterwards, followed by some queen f4, queen h4 ideas, because they can't play h6. Then you also have queen d2, f4, e5 things, and stuff like that. We've seen g6 and d6 possibilities. What happens if classic but a little bit passive bishop e7? Nothing. You just go d4, knight takes d4. If they go d6, it transposes to the line we've just seen. So when they go castle, you just take, and it once again transposes into a similar type of positions that we've just analyzed. When they go d5, castles. Why do I like this position so much? Because structurally speaking, if they ever if they ever take, then they end up having 3 pawn islands and this terrible a7, c7, and c6 pawns. If they go with d4, what can you do? Just jump with the knight on a4, play b3, and then you have a traditional knight b2, knight c4, and they have these very, very static pawns, and we're just about to block them and do a very bad things to them. Also, you've just created like 4 against 3 pawn majority on the king side, which means you want to go with f4, e5, and do somehow attack on the king side. And finally, when they play bishop e6, keeping like the flexibility. Well, you keep the flexibility, but I won't, buddy. I'm going to go with f5 threat. Here, I analyzed knight c5, and you go with f5, knight d3, queen d3, bishop c8, and f6. Kill this guy. Kill this guy because he can't take. You just go queen g3 mate. You also threaten that. And if they go bishop c5, thanks so much, buddy, because you've just improved position of my king, put it in safety, and now it's my turn. I'm threatening queen g3 with checkmate. You can't bring your bishop here thanks to the queen and the bishop. Rook, and all things considered, this is about to be almost completely lost for black. Very logical line on f4 would be f5, because we can take, then they would have good control of the light squares. But here we have a very nice move, knight e2. I very much like knight e2 because it goes on d4, threatening pawn and the bishop. They have to go c5 to stop that, and I have a specialty, b3. I like b3 because they can never play c4. Seems like you're about to lose the bishop, but you just have this knight e4 attacking the bishop, and then you just can do so many things, including taking and taking on c4, or if they go bishop f7, you're just going to play bishop f5 or even e6 afterwards. So after b3, knight b6, bishop b5. The point of this is not to give them to connect these pawns. Here, engine says bishop d7, which I dislike, but I think queen c8 is kind of logical because they want to go c6. When you play c3, c6, bishop d3, c4, bishop c2, c5, because it stops knight e4 once again, I think it's a very nice position because we gotta block this. They have once again the static pawn structure, even though it looks powerful in the center. I go king h2. And here, all I want to do is queen goes on g3. I want to support some h4, h5 ideas, but it's a little bit counterintuitive rook b on f to b1, because I want to play on both wings. I want to attack you on the king side with h4, h5, but at the same time, I want to play rook f to b1 and go with some very tricky things on the queen side as well. Very interesting line. Then we have a move. Now we're just going to 3 most common moves in practice. Let's take a look first. Very common, and you can expect like every I don't know, like 50% of games to be played with the bishop c5. And it's suspicious. Remember my words? It's suspicious. Why? Because when they play bishop c5, we have a very aggressive knight takes e5. Now, in comparison to Spanish Spanish four knights, whoever played fourth move, bishop b5, he knows what I'm talking about. When they take on f2, and lots of guys like to do it, now we have even an improved version because you don't even have knight g4 check. So after knight g6, e5, kill this knight with tempo. Knight g8, bishop c4, you want to make rook f1, king g1 artificial castle. Knight e7, rook f1, although this is just my approach. Engine says play h4 and h5 and chase the knight away with g6. I believe for you it's easier to play with a more logical approach and at the same time to place your king on g1, make artificial castle, and afterwards playing a very nice game. Bishop d3, castles, king g1. You have a bishop pair advantage. They can jump on f5. They have problems with the knight on g6. That is kind of limited here and they can't do much with it. And all we want to do here is go with the queen e1, queen g3 and go with h4, h5 and attack. Attack the king on g8. That's what we want to do. This is why they have to take by knight. You play d4. Taking on d4 and defending, bringing the knight back, you just play queen to d3. You play bishop to g5 and long castles. With the bishop pair, with an opposite side castles, initiative is on your side. If d6, you just go bishop a3, and once again long castles, once again the bishop pair, and the big chance to, just by storming these pawns on the king side, to do lots of harm to your opponent's position. After bishop d6, you take on e5, and now watch out. He threatens to take on c3 and to take your pawn. You play bishop d3. Looks absolutely logical. Castles, castles. And here, I had to pay a little bit more attention on this position because it's very possible that, just like I told you previously, 50% of your games you might have this position on your board. So it's very important to be very familiar with the following things and ideas, especially ideas. It's not about one move. It's about the idea. For example, in case of d6, which I absolutely find the most logical, you play f4, hitting the bishop with tempo. If you know what, if they take, you recapture, you end up with a possibly dangerous position for them because we have a bishop here, we have a strong center potentially. We want to play queen f3. We want to play either bishop b2 or bishop d2, play rook a to e1, and storm all these pawns, possibly with e5, and launch the attack. King is weak. We got a bishop here. If bishop d4, thanks once again, because my king is now safe, look at the following plan. Knight e2, harassing this bishop, jumping on g3, controlling the king side. I very much like controlling all these pieces and now having a possible attack on the king side. And go with bishop d2, queen f3, rook a to e1, and bishop c3. What a nice plan to attack your opponent's position. Bishop c6, queen f3, rook a to e1, bishop c3. This bishop it looks good, but it's useless. Bishop on c6. Okay, it attacks the pawn on e4 with the knight on f6. But we also have knight on g3. That doesn't only defend pawn on e4, but it's also ready to attack on the king side by jumping at some point on h5 when I play bishop c3. Those who take on c3, and they're, not like a small number of guys who are just going to do that. You play f4, threatening e5, and they might think, okay, what is he trying to do? I'll play this move. No, you can't do it. I'll play e5, because if you take, and take, then I have discovery, and the queen is gone. But if you play knight e5, then I have rook f7, come to daddy, big baby. So you just go with this. Queen h5, and that's it. All things considered, in all the games that I found online, they played rook e8. And now there is a very special move. For example, this is one of those moves that you can't... Look at this. They threaten bishop c3, followed by knight takes c4. And now you have to be concrete. Generally speaking, most of you would defend this by in a very... I would call it patzerish way, bishop g5, pinning the knight to defend the pawn. Don't ever do it. It's a very, that's what I hate. On rook e1, then your rook is no longer an f-file, and then you don't have any more attacking ideas. And the special thing here, knight b5. What a powerful move. Absolutely, you threaten b4, f4 to trap this bishop. They can't play bishop d4. What a powerful move. Only move, believe it or not, because they can't stop f4. Look at this. They gotta do c6, f4, and they have to end up with this terrible bishop. Don't forget. Now, they threaten the knight and the pawn. We just go back here. They go d5 and e5. Take a look at this bishop. It has to be bad for them. And I analyzed here queen h5, g6, queen h6, which is a nice plan with the rook f3, h4, h5, and do the attack. Or just go with bishop e3, king h1 to avoid bishop b6 with further simplifications. But you know what? Actually, you can even take, I even analyze this and go like this and go with absolutely, you know what? You're in the driver's seat in a game like this. You know what are you going to do, and you just want to push some rook a to e1 and f5. All things considered, they gotta play two main moves. It's d5, or bishop b4. When they play d5, you just take and play bishop b5. Take a look at this one. Lots of guys will find very hard to defend pawn on e5. They can play bishop d6, knight is simply hanging. They can play f6, you just go castle, and there is a very interesting line. If they go bishop c5 just to develop, and they can't do it, they have to play knight c3, by the way. But if they go with bishop c5, you just take on e5, give queen h5 check, and after king e7, king f8 doesn't work because of queen f3, and you win the knight. And when they think, okay, but I'm defending, no man, you're not defending anything. I take on c6, and now your bishop on c5 and rook on a8 are hanging. They go king e7, you go d4. What a lovely move. If they take by pawn, you take on d5. When they take by bishop, you have a specialty, bishop c4, threatening this knight. And if they move the knight, you go queen f7. If they play knight c3, that's why we played d4, and the queen is gone. What a nice tactics you have in this line. Knight d4, you have bishop c4, knight c3, bishop g5, and everything looks so good for you. So finally, when they play bishop b5, knight c3, b takes c3. Why by b pawn? Because I want to play d4, and I want to build up a strong center. So let's go. They have to play bishop d6 to defend pawn and to go with castle. But there were a couple of games played bishop d7. You have a nice line, queen e2. Immediately pawn on e5 is dropping. If they think like, but wait, what if I defend? No man, I play d4, and you've just weakened the light squares and everything is weak. I found the game, queen e7, bishop e3, e4, knight e2, f5, castles, knight b3, f3, breaking everything, and after bishop d5 in 16 moves, white was completely winning. Also, there is a game, queen e2, queen f6, d4, bishop g5, bishop c4, g4. Now you see advantage of having h3, and d takes e5. White was winning in 13 moves in this game. So they have to play bishop d6. We go castle, castle, and d4. This is an interesting position. It reminds me of Petrov opening. In Petrov opening, we usually have bishop on d3. They don't have bishop on g4, which is very important in this position. So that's how we kind of justify this h3 being played. But you know what? It's not easy to say if we're just so much better in this position. Probably we're not. We're just a tiny bit better. I checked a couple of games where the guys tried to play bishop f5 to stop any bishop d3 by us and to have like this nice bishop. But the problem is I play c4, and I found a game Nigel Short against Cheparinov, played in World Blitz Championship. Cheparinov played queen f6, which seems absolutely logical. He wants to go after this. He was lost. He was lost, and Short missed it. Short was supposed to take on c6, play c5, and look at this. If bishop c5 looks like rook is hanging, no, you just have intermediary. Queen has to move, then you take the bishop. If they go with bishop e7, then you just go bishop g5, and you can't go anywhere else but here and say goodbye to your bishop. Or say goodbye to this one after we play knight e2. So everything here is just good. They have to play, you threaten c5 definitely. They have a little bit problems with the space and how to deal with their pieces. Rook e1. For example, I like this one. Bishop c6 and bishop f4. Yes, we do have like a chance to play knight a5 and to go into opposite colors bishop, but we would be in the driver's seat once again. And you know what? After bishop f4 and bishop e5, I'd be the one who's boss here, because I would have like a knight against the bishop. Yes, game is fairly open, but they have a broken pawn structure. So after c4, I found one game with knight a5. That's a top engine move. c5, c6, bishop e2, bishop c7. And then you just go with some rook e1 or bishop d2, queen d5, queen c1 to stop and to go with rook e1. Nothing. White is just a little bit better. Nothing that special, but okay, this is what you have to know. Or this one to sack the pawn and to go with a bishop here. After c takes d4, h6, rook e1. I'll show you the game between two GMs. Bishop f5. I like rook b1. I like rook b1 with the idea to put some pressure against the pawn on b7, to go in some positions with the rook on b3. I'm just saying in some positions, and then your rook goes onto the e file or into the attack. Of course, it cannot go because of the bishop right now. But at the same time, I also like it because if they ever go with some queen f6, you will have some bishop b2 with the ideas d5, c4, and these kinds of things. So this is nice attacking, but at the same time, it's a nice preventive move against the queen f6. After rook e8, don't exchange, play bishop e3. Against this one, you can exchange the light square bishops, go with c4. If they play b5, go anyways with this. Nothing that special. But if we you know, like roughly look at this position, we both have like same number of weaknesses, but we do have a little bit better game and a little bit better chances. Objectively, position is maybe tiny bit better for white, but nothing that special. And finally, if h3, bishop b4, I'll show you two ways. I'll show you how Giri played against Kramnik in London Classic tournament game. He went for bishop d3. Very unusual line. The idea of this system, and by the way, don't forget, Giri in the same tournament, he didn't play against some patzers. He beat Michael Adams, he beat Vladimir Kramnik, and drew one more game. I believe Wesley Saw was black. So what's the point? In his famous game against Kramnik was castle, played a3, and now bishop on d3 defends this pawn. And Kramnik went for knight e7, repositioning his knight, and maybe wants to do some c6, d5 afterwards. a4, getting some space on the queen side. a5, getting some space on the queen side. And after knight g6, going with c4, stopping d5 forever. And not just that, going with bishop e3, b4, absolutely gaining the space on the queen side, giving up the light square bishop if he wants, he's feel free to take it. Now goes back so he can never think of any kind of tactics, and went with the king h2 followed by g3, kicking the knight away and slowly improving his position. Giri won this game. Very nice game. Bishop pair, more space. I definitely prefer white. In one more game that I found, Michael Adams played d6, Giri played a3, played b4, went for the dark square bishop, won the dark square bishop afterwards, and with the bishop pair managed to win the game. And finally, after bishop d3, castles, d6, a3, this one, and h6, I found a very nice high-level correspondence game where the guy played h6. Makes sense because they don't have the dark square bishop, they don't have a flexible knight, so we really threaten bishop g5, which looks more than annoying here. They go h6 to prevent that, but now we go rook e1. They go bishop e6, and now we go a4. Typical Giri's idea of just you know, like simple space grabbing move on the queen side. a5 to stop a5, so b3. Why? He wants to go at some point with some c4. Knight here, bishop e3, knight e2, queen h5. Look at maneuvering by white in this game. The guy played knight g6, g3, limiting the scope of the knight on g6, f4, getting that kind of a flexibility that is typical for King's Indian when you take by this pawn, and you also can go with a rook h1 and king h2 and rook g1. brought a queen back, played king h2, brought a knight, bishop back, preventing and defending better e4 square, playing rook e2 so it can defend, and this correct rook can go into the attack. Fantastic game by white. Improve the position of the bishop, find a way to, I don't know, retreat it and have a nice retreating squares. Bishop goes on b2, goes queen e3 because he's eyeing possibly some ideas with the bishop and the queen here, and after rook f2 he just had a winning game and of course won in couple of moves. A beautiful thing. And if you ask me, this bishop d3 looks extremely weird, looks absolutely not like a schoolish type of move, but I like it a lot. Finally, instead of bishop d3 you can play knight e5 that Magnus played few, I believe, months ago against Wesley So, and no, against Le Quang Liem. So what are the points? Against So captured on d5 and played e4. What I like about h3 is that now if you're happy with the draw or just a tiny advantage, you can take on c6 what Magnus did, queen f3, bishop c4, king d1, rook e1, and play a game like this. He played a game, went into a little bit better endgame, but eventually they made the draw. Magnus really has a little bit better position here. You can check it out. Although he couldn't finish off Wesley So, they made a draw. The game was played in 2021. But the thing is, when they play e4, thanks to the pawn on h3, you can also put your knight back on h2. I would give an interesting mark to this move, because right now we're threatening this knight. And when I go knight e7 to attack the pawn, c3, and now you're breaking in the center. And when they take, they have to play some e3, but when they take, you play queen h5, defending, bringing it back, threatening bishop g5 followed by knight g4, and now you just play bishop d3. I really find this position a lot better for us because of the weaknesses of the dark squares, bishop on c8, and exposed king on g8. That's also interesting. They gotta go some e3 you take, and you know what? If somebody has to play a game like this, to give up the bishop pair for broken king and rook, I'm willing to take this risk because I'm going to solidify myself. g3, king g2, rook h1. It's not a problem. In the long run, I'm the one who's going to be with a little bit better initiative. And finally, if bishop c5 after knight e5, you just go c3. But you don't go c3 to go d4, sorry. You go either b4, where you win the bishop pair and play a game like this. This is Carlsen, Le Quang Liem. You never release the tension in the center. You always go queen c2 defending on e4 and controlling everything. Bishop e2 castles. And this is Magnus against Le Quang Liem game. He was a little bit better. The game was played 2020 during Corona. And if d3, if you don't want to play b4 and win the bishop pair, d3, I'll show you a game, a very interesting game between Shimanov and Le Quang Liem. Le Quang, poor guy, lost all his games against this fun variation with h3. If h6, you go b4, you go a4, you take on b6 like this. Now they have a broken pawn structure, terrible bishop, and now you go with kind of my favorite type of plan. c4, if they take on b4, e5 is hanging, bishop d2, b5, and now, boom, g4. With the bishop pair, rook g1, h4, h5, g5. This guy Shimanov played this after queen h5. He was winning. The game was played a few months ago. So just like you see, you will barely be able to find a line in e4, e5 where you can play g4 and attack on the king side. And this is the one. And finally, if d3, they take on d5, you take knight e5, knight e5, d4. You just play bishop d3. And this reminds me of some typical Petrov positions where we have both of these bishops being open. They have problems with the light square bishop. They have problems with the dark square bishop just because of more space. Engine gives a lot better advantage to white. I would say once again it's between slightly and much better, but I definitely would very much enjoy playing a game like this. I've seen one game where the guy played b6 trying to solve the problem of the light square bishop like this. Well, you know what? I'm not afraid if somebody goes with this move. It doesn't scare me. He just wants to go with this. I would play rook e1 after bishop b7. I can even go with some a4, a5. I can even consider some c4 and d5 to close it. So after like rook e1, bishop b7, aha, you no longer have a possibility to control f5. Let me just go with the knight h4 and knight f5. Let me just go with some attack. g6. Let me just go with tempo. You go rook e8. Not a big deal. Let me just go with a queen d2. And somehow we always end up with an interesting attacking possibilities. I'm not saying this is perfect, but I'm saying against e4, e5, that is anyways considered to be hyper solid by black, I just gave you some interesting material to work on. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, donate, and come up with some feedbacks. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.